back to Divulge Talk Show. Today is the last episode of season 1, and I'm going to be taking you guys through a story time as to why I started this show. My name is Moma Bandi and I'm the founder and the host of this talk show, and I just decided to take you guys through my journey as to why I actually decided to start my own talk show. Where did it all start? Why do I love having conversations? And let me just dive right into it and say that growing up, back in the day when I was younger, my family and I loved television. I remember reminiscing and just remembering how we used to sit on the couch, watch TV, and that is just what actually bonded us and brought us together. And looking back, my parents loved talk shows, especially my mom, and she would watch talk shows, and I remember we'd watch together growing up. And I can name a few, like some of the talk shows we would watch, from Dr. Phil, the Oprah Winfrey Show, the Tyra Banks Show, Turning Point, and 700 Club, which would air on Trinity Broadcasting Network, which is also known as TBN, and the list goes on, you guys. We would just like binge watch talk shows, and after that just have conversations, and even until this day, we just have conversations. And I believe that it is that time whereby the seed was actually planted within me just to love conversations. Even though I didn't know that at one point in my life, which is today, I will actually be sitting and having my own talk show. So growing up, that has always been a part of our life, and my mom always says that when I was younger, I actually used to talk to myself a lot. Like, I'll just talk to myself, just wherever I am in the house, I'll just be talking and talking and talking. And this is actually very true, because I do remember a scenario whereby I remember we were living at this house, and I was at the backyard, and I would just go outside, alone, and I'll just start talking to the grass, to the trees, to the leaves, to the wall, and it was just an amazing time for me during that time where I would just talk to myself. And of course, it came from a place where I would portray cartoon characters that I would watch on TV, or the talk shows that I would see on TV. Sometimes I'll pretend to be a guest, or sometimes I'll be the host. And these are the things, when I was actually preparing for those videos, I was like, hold up, this is actually where it came from. And it's starting to make sense now that I'm older, that hey, this is actually something that has always been within me, even though throughout my primary years and high school years I didn't know. Though in primary I joined a Stedford, which is public speaking, but you'll be doing like poetry, and I used to love it. I remember I would love standing in front of people, even though I was a very shy girl, but I would just be like, look, I can do this. And I would stand in front of people, and I would just start saying the poems, because our teachers would give us poetry, and then we just have to choose a poetry that we like, and we had to memorize it and then go upstage, and then you get a certificate whether or not you do good or bad. We had to do facial expressions, just expressing what the poem was all about. And these are the little things that started happening when I was younger, and I believe a seed was planted within me, even though I didn't know. And it is only now, seated here, that I'm actually realizing that hey, this seed is starting to sprout. And that's just how it happened. The initial idea of starting Divulge Talk Show came in 2018, and this was actually 2 years after I'd finished my grade 12, or graduated from my matric here in South Africa. And I wasn't working, I wasn't schooling, I was at the lowest, it was like the lowest time of my life. I just felt like, who am I? Especially when you're young, you're a teenager, you want to go to school, you see others going to school, to university, enrolling, or they're working, and I didn't even have any of that. And it was one of those times where I was just really low, I wasn't really myself. However, being at home, I would always watch talk shows as usual. And I remember one of the talk shows that I loved watching so much was Real Talk with Anele, which was hosted by Anele Mdoda, and I loved it. Each and every day on SABC3, I would tune in, and I remember I would be cooking and listening and watching, or just sit and watch, and it was amazing. And as well as Real Time, the talk show in America, the one which was hosted at that time by Tamar Braxton, Tamara Mowry, Lorna Love, and Jeannie Mai. And just looking forward to these conversations, the interviews and the guests, and I loved watching. So going back to Real Talk with Anele, I was so motivated. And it is during that time I was like, you know what, I actually want to start my own talk show. I could feel the zeal within me, but I always withdrew. I always felt demotivated. And this came from a place whereby growing up, I was always told that I'm too quiet. It seemed like people sort of had a problem with it. And I mean, people still do, throw those comments and be like, oh my gosh, Mo Blessing, you're so quiet. But when I was younger, it was even worse because they'd be like, you're so quiet, you're so shy, your voice is too low, can you even talk? People would ask me if I can even talk. I mean, of course, I was a very shy girl. I was very quiet, compliant and calm and collected. And by the time I decided I want to start a talk show, all those voices started playing in my head. And I was just like, I don't think I'm the right candidate for this. So what happened was, when Anile eventually left Real Talk, the show started introducing Azania Mosaka. And just right the first day Azania hosted Real Talk, I knew it in my spirit, in my soul, that I am able to start a talk show. And this is why. So if you know Azania, she's a very calm and collected person. She's very sweet, and all that. And I saw myself in her. I saw an older version of myself in her, because I was like, hold up. If she is like this, like she's not a bubbly person, and she's on national television, I mean, I can definitely start my talk show. And it is because of her, literally, no one else, because of Azania, that I told myself, I'm not going back. I'm definitely starting this show. And I always had the notion that in order for you to be a presenter or a host, you need to have a bubbly personality, and I didn't have that bubbly personality. And during that time I was just like, hey, I'm doing it, I'm starting this talk show. And then I remember I had this old big black Samsung laptop, and I started typing what I want my talk show to be. I didn't have a name by that time, but I had an idea that, okay, this is how I want my talk show to be, etc. And that's just how everything unfolded. So one day, I texted a friend of mine. So this friend of mine, we used to work together, and he had, I'm saying had because I don't know if he still has a modeling agency now. And I texted him, I'm like, hey, how are you? So there's something that I need to tell you, but I need you to keep it a secret. And I told him to keep it a secret because I was still impostoring myself. I didn't really believe that I'm able to start a talk show. And I told him, look, I want to start a talk show, and I just need you to keep it a secret for now. I don't want you to tell anyone. I just decided to open up to you. And the reason why I opened up to him, because he has always been a good friend of mine, and also because he was very interested in, just being part of the media, modeling, and all photography, videography. I felt he understood me better. So he was interested. He's like, oh, so tell me about this talk show. What do you want it to be? I started. And one thing about this friend of mine is that God used him. Every time I think about it, I really get so emotional, because he has never been actively part of the talk show. But when I started, he was sort of like a foundation to affirm positivity in my life, because I was always a negative person. I would always be negative. And he told me, he's like, look, if you're going to be negative, these things will manifest. You need to start being positive. And I started being positive. I started thinking positive about the talk show, but even my entire life. And I really appreciate God for using my friend to just be supportive. He was very patient, because I would always tell him, this is what I'm thinking about my talk show. I would send him pictures of my chairs, my designs, the logo, etc. And he was just so patient with me. And I really, really appreciate that kind of foundation that grounded me to be positive, because honestly, it is only positivity that actually brought me to to pushing towards the mark of starting a talk show. Telling him, and of course he wasn't the only one. My mom, my brothers, and a small circle of my friends, they really participated in my family, and that is just eventually how the talk show just eventually started. And looking at my life circumstances at that time, you wouldn't even imagine starting a talk show, because there was not even space to, first of all, I didn't even have a proper phone to take a video. I feel like I wasn't really ready to sit down and start talking about topics. I think I needed to do a little bit more of growing. So between 2018 and 2019, let me say 2.5 years, because I launched my first video in June, I think it was June or July 2020. That's when I think at that time I was really ready to open up and to just have this talk show. And even though my life circumstances were terrible, I didn't lose hope. I would literally wake up thinking about this talk show and sleep thinking about this talk show, and I still do wake up and sleep thinking about my talk show, and just, you know, just everything about it just makes me feel so motivated. And that's just how, guys, I started my talk show. How the name came about, that's definitely another story for another day, but here I am with Divulge Talk Show. So to divulge or to divulge, whichever way you pronounce it, basically means to communicate, to reveal, to expose, to go public with. Just to name a few. That's what to divulge means. So divulge is the perfect word, because the vision, or rather the vision and mission of my talk show was to expose, to talk about, to go public with these topics and conversations that I felt like, well, people are not really talking about, or maybe they are talking about it, but it's not enough. And I just wanted to be that extra person to talk about it, and also just to create a platform for people who are probably afraid to open up, and probably they can be like, yo, more blessing, can you please talk about this, you know, that kind of a thing. And that's just what Divulge Talk Show means. And if you've been following me throughout day one, you know I always talk about young people, I always talk about the youth. And that's because, I mean, common sense, generally, young people are the future, you know, we're the future leaders of tomorrow. And I always feel like sometimes the bad things that we do, or the bad things that people do when they grow older, is because they lacked conversation. I come from an African household, and there's a place whereby as a child you're not allowed to have certain conversations with your parents, you know, for example, dating and sex. You know, you are not allowed to talk to your dad or your mom about it, and they, as your parents, feel like they can't talk about that with you. But what they don't understand is, if you're not going to talk about dating and sex with me, I'm definitely going to go out there and find out for myself. And what happens when I find out for myself? I will sleep around and get HIV, STIs, or teenage pregnancy, for example. So having a platform to talk about taboo topics, or to talk about things like mental health, grooming, and, you know, those kind of things, I felt is very important, just to be that extra person in this world, and to walk into my purpose, and to actually talk about all these things. So guys, this is what Divulge Talk Show is all about. This is why I started Divulge Talk Show. I really love having conversations. I love learning from other people. I love, you know, even sharing my own opinions and my own life experiences, because what I talk about can change someone's life, you know. And that's why I'm doing this, because I want people to be positively impacted. I want their minds to be open. And me bringing people over means I'm saying, look, you have something that can help someone out there. You have something that can help me as well, because me starting a talk show does not mean I know everything, but it just means I am willing to learn whatever it is that I can learn in order to become better, in order to grow as a person. So thank you guys for subscribing, and thank you for season 1. Each and every one of you who came to the talk show, the business that you know, were part of the show as well, that allowed me to advertise their businesses. And to those of you who have subscribed, who have liked, who have told your friends, I really appreciate you guys so much. And thank you so much, you guys, for you know, just being part of this journey. I really appreciate it, and it's been amazing, you know. One thing Divulge Talk Show has taught me is confidence. My confidence went from here to there, and when I look at myself, I'm just like, is this me though? Is this me? But anyway, I really appreciate, and I thank God as well, who has actually pushed me, because there are times where I'm just like, I don't know if I can do this, but I always hear, you know, the voice of God just telling me, yo girl, you can do this. So the so-called shy girl doesn't really exist. I mean, maybe she does just a little bit, but I really have grown. This talk show has grown me so much, and I'm definitely open to grow even more and even further. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And here's to season 2. We are hoping for the best. We are hoping for hot topics, interesting topics. If you have a topic and if you want us to talk about it, let us know. And if you want to be part of the conversation, you are more than welcome to be part of Divulge Talk Show. So guys, until next time and until season 2, goodbye and God bless. Peace. Yeah.